Hello, Commons family, and welcome to our online service today. We're so glad that you joined us. You're in luck today because you're only going to get the announcements from me. You're going to get to hear from Gretta today for our sermon and talk. But the only announcement I really want to make sure that we understand is that we are not going to have an online service next Sunday for the Super Bowl Sunday. That's kind of keeping in tradition. We've never had service because we meet at 5 o'clock, and that's about when the Super Bowl is. So this year what we're going to do is we're going to put together a conglomerate video of you and your faces. We want to just see, we miss seeing your faces, and we want to get as many of you as we can into a little short video. So what we need you to do is you and your roommates or your friends or your kids or your parents, whoever you're with, if you could just shoot a very short video horizontally on your phone where someone throws you a football from off the screen and you say whatever you want to the Commons community. You can say, hi, we miss you. You can say who you're cheering for in the Super Bowl, as long as it's not Tom Brady's team, he who must not be named. Whatever you want to say, just say something to say hi, and then throw the football off the screen, and then we're going to put those all together for a chance just to see the whole community. If once you shoot that video, you can send it to info@flagstaffcommons.com, and then we'll do it from there. So right now you're going to get to hear from Gretta, and I'm really excited about that, because if you've been with us, this whole series and discussion on Inside Out, the movie and the emotions, was really her idea. And today she's going to talk about sadness, and I know you're going to love what she has to say. So here she is.
Hey everyone, I'm Gretta, and thanks Charlie for the introduction. I'm really excited to share with you all today. We are in the middle of a series called Inside Out, and we are basing this series on the movie Inside Out, the Disney movie, and we've been talking about emotions and 5 different emotions that are depicted in this film. And if you haven't seen the movie, I just want to give you a little bit of a recap of what it's about, because I am going to be referring to it a few times throughout my talk. And basically, this movie is set inside the mind of an 11-year-old little girl named Riley. And there's 5 emotions that you see in her mind that are the main characters. And those 5 emotions are joy, anger, fear, disgust, and sadness. And you see how these emotions help her navigate her life and make choices and feel things. You also see these pillars of her personality in her mind. You see, as she's creating new memories, every memory becomes this glowing ball of light, and each memory is kind of labeled with an emotion. So if she has a joyful memory, it's yellow. If she has an angry memory, it's red, or a sad memory, it's blue. And you watch her navigate her life. And especially for her in this movie, she is going through a big transition. Her family is moving from one city to another where she doesn't know anyone, and that stirs up a lot within her, and you see how these emotions navigate in that time. And I think this film has some deep things to say about the nature of emotion, and that makes sense because the creators of this film actually really interacted and consulted a lot with psychologists and mental health specialists, and they really wanted to make sure that when they're talking about emotion, that it's consistent with scientific research, which I think is super cool. And the emotion that we're talking about today is sadness. And if you know me very well, it's probably interesting that I'm talking about sadness because I resonate mostly with the character Joy in this film. I think that naturally I'm wired a little bit more towards joy. Joy is kind of the foundation and the base note of how I function and where I function from. But even as I've moved into adulthood, I've had to realize where I need to dig that up a little bit and where I need to restructure that in my life and ask myself, what purpose does sadness have in my life and where does that belong? And Joy, you see the character Joy in this movie kind of processes that at the beginning as well. She kind of sees sadness and is like, I'm not sure why she's here or what her purpose is, but I'm just going to do my thing. And maybe at one time or another, many of us have probably wondered what the purpose of sadness is in our life, right? I mean, this last year has been a really hard year for a lot of people. It's been sad, and you probably don't need me to explain all the reasons why, with the pandemic and the tensions in relationships and the political climate and over 400,000 deaths just in our country alone from the coronavirus. It's been a hard year. It's been sad. It's stirred up a lot of emotions. And I know my emotions are on edge. They are fired up. I was preparing for this sermon and I came across a video on Instagram, and it was of this father and his 11-year-old son. And his 11-year-old son has leukemia and has to go into the hospital for these long treatments and these big processes, and only one parent at a time can go in the hospital with a kid because of COVID-19, and the dad decided that he would wait in the parking lot and dress up silly and blast music from the car and start just dancing, just doing these silly, wild dancing, just twerking and doing all these goofy things, just so that his son could look out of the hospital window and see his dad and laugh and smile and maybe even dance along with his dad from the hospital window. And I was watching this and I was just bawling because it was so beautiful and sweet and real. And, I was thinking about what is that emotion? What is that I'm feeling? Are those tears of sadness because the kid is sick? Are those tears of joy because of the love that you see that the dad has for his son? Maybe it's both, right? Maybe these feelings are more connected than we sometimes think that they are. For me, these last 6 months have probably been some of the saddest times of my life. And I think there's a few different reasons for that, but the main one would be just watching my sister in her fight with brain cancer. My older sister, Krista, she was diagnosed with brain cancer about 3 years ago, and she, was a healthy woman in her 30s, a teacher, and was out at recess watching the kids one day, and boom, face planted into the blacktop, had a seizure, woke up in the hospital, and was told that her MRI was showing a mass in her brain. And since then, she's had full-on brain surgery. She's done chemotherapy, she's done radiation, she's done speech therapy and physical therapy. And for a while there, it was looking a lot better. She was living a pretty normal life. She felt free. She was still just on a few medications and going to her checkups, but we were really hopeful that maybe it had passed. And then this past summer, she went in for her normal checkup, and the MRI was showing new growth of a tumor in a different part of her brain. And starting this summer, she began to experience different side effects from this new tumor. Physical side effects that changed what she was able to do physically and affected her short-term memory, affected her day-to-day lifestyle and what she was able to do. And we're still in the middle of that, and she's still experiencing those struggles. And she's so strong, and she's so positive, and she's so hardworking and loving, and she's just one of my heroes, and that's still true today. But watching her struggle and not knowing how to help and not knowing if she's going to get better or get worse, and thinking about her two beautiful children who are 10 and 11, I feel sadness. And I feel sad about that. And that hasn't always been an easy thing for me to admit. I think growing up, I was always praised for being the happy girl. And my parents were always very positive and looked on the bright side. And even when I saw the pain behind their eyes, they always had a good way of thinking about the good and talking about the good things going on in our life. And there's a scene in the movie where you see Riley and her parents are in this really stressful time, and they've just moved and there's a lot going on, and they look at Riley and they say, "Just keep being our happy girl." I really resonate with that in some ways, because I think growing up, there was parts of me that felt like something was wrong if I wasn't always happy. There didn't seem to be a space where I could be sad, or if I was sad, maybe I would just go process that alone in my room. And just to clarify, I'm really thankful for my upbringing. I think there's a lot worse parenting styles out there than being overly positive. Very grateful. But I do think as I've grown and as I've had to learn about myself and as I've had to function in my marriage and function in my friendships, I've had to really work hard to learn what vulnerability looks like and what authenticity looks like and how to express what I'm actually feeling and live my truth. And since then, I've really learned, and I'm still learning, that you can't force joy. You can't force it. I don't think it works. I think what happens when you try to force joy is a couple of things. It could either be that you set these high expectations for happiness and you want happiness so bad and you have such big hopes for it that reality just never meets your expectations and always leaves you feeling empty or dissatisfied. I think that's one experience. Or if you try to force joy, I think for me, what I experience is what psychologists would call emotional suppression. And emotional suppression is where you're feeling all these things and you just say, okay, this just needs to stay over here. This just needs to tuck down in here, and I don't need to think about that. I can think about these other things, and we're going to be good. We're fine. We don't need to worry about that right now. And you push it down, and you push it away. You try to control it so that you can focus on joy. That's another thing that could happen if you try to force joy. And I was doing that again a couple weeks ago, and I was watching this movie Inside Out actually with my kids, and there was this scene that came up and it really called me out and hit home. And it's this scene where it's Riley's first day of school. This 11-year-old girl, she's in her new city, her new home, and it's her first day of school. And Joy wakes up in her mind and says, okay, everyone, this is going to be a great day. We're going to make it awesome. Nothing wrong can happen. It's going to be great. We're just going to have an awesome day. And Joy goes over to the character of Sadness and she says, okay, Sadness, your one job today is to stay in this circle. She draws a circle and says, this is the circle of sadness. And your one job today is to keep all of the sadness inside this circle. And that is emotional suppression right there, right? And Joy is trying to keep sadness away so we can just make today a great day. And it actually ends up backfiring in the movie, right? We see Sadness come out at this really inopportune time that leads to Riley breaking down, which ultimately leaves her not feeling any joy or any sadness, leaves her feeling numb. And then that leads her to kind of lash out in anger and lash out in fear and these other emotions that are being riled up. And it didn't work. The whole suppression thing, right? It wasn't making her the truest version of herself. It led her to this emotionally unstable position. So I just want to say that I really do believe that sadness is vital to our well-being. I think there's a couple different ways that sadness can interact in our lives, and I want to talk about 3 specifically right now. I know that there's a lot more than 3, but just to focus on 3 today. So 1, maybe you've experienced what I've experienced. Are you suppressing your sadness? And what if instead of suppressing our tough emotions, we were able to mindfully embrace them? What if we were able to make space for our sadness, to feel our sadness, to engage with our sadness, instead of just pushing it away? The second is maybe you're not suppressing your sadness. Maybe you feel like you're drowning in sadness. Sadness is real and sadness is hard. And I just want to be really clear about something, that depression is not the same as sadness. I think sadness is a side effect of depression. But if you're experiencing intense, prolonged feelings of sadness, it's okay to ask for help. Maybe you need to talk to a counselor or a therapist. I am not a mental health professional, and there are people who have tools and resources and conversations that can help process those deep feelings of depression. So please know that that's an okay thing to ask for help, to reach out. And as a church, we want to help with that too. If you are feeling that and you just don't know where to start, please reach out, and we would love to help you in that process. And another reason that I want to talk about a way that you can interact with sadness is maybe you aren't feeling any sadness at all. Maybe you're feeling like everything's good, life's awesome, we're doing fine, life's good, no sadness here. Really just, content. And I guess my challenge for you would be, why are you not sad? Because there's a lot to be sad about in the world. And I'm not asking you to go make yourself sad, but I am challenging you to think about, is there something you need to become passionate about? Is there something you need to start feeling empathy for in the world? Maybe it's sex slavery, maybe it's racism, maybe it's poverty. Maybe you need to challenge yourself to learn a little bit more about something and feel a little bit more of what someone else is feeling so that you can go make the world a better place, so that you can do something about it. Empathy is often what sparks creative acts of kindness in bettering the world. So we also don't want to be complacent. We also don't want to be numb, right? Don't let yourself live in numbness because it seems safer than feeling empathy. Right? Like Jesus himself on the Sermon on the Mount said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn." Jesus recognized sadness. And at times Jesus himself was sad. And we're going to pick up here and to talk a little bit more about that in John chapter 11. And to set up this story in John here, this story is about Jesus and these three siblings. So the three siblings are Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And Lazarus, the brother, becomes really sick. And all three of these siblings are really close to Jesus. They're really good friends. He loves them. So Mary and Martha write a note out to Jesus and tell them that Lazarus has become really ill. And Jesus receives this note, and he ends up staying where he is for 2 more days. And then after those 2 days, he says to his disciples, "Let's go to Judea," where they are. And that picks up here in verse 11 when Jesus is talking to his disciples. He says, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but now I will go and wake him up." The disciples said, "Lord, if he is sleeping, he will soon get better." They thought Jesus meant Lazarus was simply sleeping, but Jesus meant Lazarus had died. So he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead." So the disciples follow along. They all go on this big travel. And when they get there, they learn that Lazarus has died and that he's actually been in the tomb already for 4 days. And then Martha and Mary hear that Jesus is close by, and they go out to meet him. And the group of people that have been mourning and grieving with them follow along. And it picks up here in verse 32. When Mary arrived and saw Jesus, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, a deep anger welled up within him, and he was deeply troubled. "Where have you put him?" he asked them. They told him, "Lord, come and see." Then Jesus wept. The people who were standing nearby said, "See how much he loved him." But some said, "This man healed a blind man. Couldn't he have kept Lazarus from dying?" Jesus was still angry as he arrived at the tomb. He came a cave with a stone rolled across the entrance. "Roll the stone aside," Jesus told them. But Martha, the dead man's sister, protested, "Lord, he has been dead for 4 days. The smell will be terrible." Jesus responded, "Didn't I tell you that you would see God's glory if you believe?" So they rolled the stone aside. Then Jesus looked up to heaven and said, "Father, thank you for hearing me. You always hear me, but I said it out loud for the sake of all these people standing here so that they will believe you sent me." Then Jesus shouted, "Lazarus, come out." And the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound in grave cloths, his face wrapped in a headcloth. And Jesus told them, "Unwrap him and let him go." So a lot of things happened in that story, right? You see Jesus interacting with the disciples, Jesus interacting with Martha and Mary, Jesus being sad, and ultimately Jesus performing this amazing miracle of bringing this man back to life. But there's a few things that really stand out to me in this experience, and the first would be Jesus' anger. I don't know if you noticed that it said twice in there that Jesus was angry. And I think his sadness and his anger were intertwined. They were connected, right? His sadness was rooted in a place of anger. And I think that that's true. Emotions are not just standalone. They're intertwined, they're connected, they flow from one to another, right? At the end of the movie, you see that instead of each memory, each glowing ball of memory, it's not just labeled as one color or one emotion per memory. Once joy stops trying to control everyone and manage everything, and once all the emotions are working together, you see that each memory actually holds multiple colors and multiple emotions that are wrapped up in each memory. They blend together, they mold together, they work together. I think that that's true in life, and Jesus is experiencing that here as he's feeling sadness and anger. Also, I find it interesting in this story that Jesus knows that Lazarus is dead. Like, he knows from the beginning that his plan is to bring him back to life. So he knows that this story ends with hope on the other side. And Jesus knows that there's life and healing on the other side. And still, he stops to weep. Still, he stops and cries with his friends and feels sad. There's a part in the movie where there's this character named Bing Bong, and Bing Bong is Riley's old imaginary friend, and Bing Bong just lost something that really means a lot to him, and he's just crying and really worked up and sad about this thing that he's lost. And Joy comes over and tries to make it better and tries to point out the positive and tries to do everything she can to make him happy again, and it's just not working. And then sadness comes over and just sits next to Bing Bong and just is sad with him and says, "You really loved that thing, didn't you? You had a lot of great memories in it, huh? That's sad." And together they're sad, and then he takes a deep breath and Bing Bong says, "I feel better. Let's go." It's because he sat with sadness, right? He didn't rush to hope. He didn't rush to feeling better. He sat with his sadness. And that's what Jesus does here, right? He can fix it right away. He can make it better right away. He knows that there's a good ending to this story, but Jesus stops and is sad with his friends. I think that there's something special there, because what I've realized is consistent in so many of these stories is that the sadness leads to this personal connection, which then sometimes can ultimately lead to joy, right? Like, Jesus comes to Martha and Mary because of sadness. Sadness brings them together for this sweet personal connection where they can grieve together, which ultimately brings us to this beautiful ending. Or in the film Inside Out, at the end, Riley, instead of running away, she realizes that she needs to go back home. And she goes back home and she stands in front of her parents and cries and tells them all the reasons that she's been sad. And they say, "We love you, and we feel that too, and it's okay." And they pull her in close and they hug and they cry together. And she feels this sweet release. It turns from sadness to this personal connection, which then ultimately brings her joy. And I think I've experienced that too, even in my relationship with my sister, right? Like, this is a sad circumstance that she is in, but we are also closer than we've ever been. We call each other consistently. We've been doing yoga over FaceTime like twice a week. I've been going out there to visit more often. This sadness has brought this personal connection, which has led us to more joy. So what? What do we want to pull from this today? I was reading our good friend Brian Graham's blog. Many of you probably know Brian, and he has a blog called The Story We Write. And I thought this quote was really beautiful. It says, "There's a fine line between heartache and hopelessness, and we must recognize the difference because there is always hope." And to me, I just feel the truth in that. It's like, it's okay to feel heartache. It's okay to feel deep pain, while also knowing that we're not hopeless, right? There is hope. We don't have to rush to it. We don't have to feel it right away, but it is present. And hopefully we will get to it once we work through whatever sadness we're processing, right? Like, I am sad, but it is still true that Jesus brings things back from the dead. Jesus is continually resurrecting parts of me, and Jesus brings hope and everlasting life, and Jesus was sad. So friends, today as we wrap this up, I just hope we can move forward, no longer suppressing our sadness, no longer holding it up to this high expectation that's unattainable, but that we can sit with it, we can feel it, we can flow with it, because our emotions are moving, they're connected. Emotion is in motion. And instead of forcing joy, maybe we can feel our way towards joy. And I think it's important to remember that God weeps with us. God is in our pain with us. God is not absent when we are sad. God is holding us when we are sad. And that is true always. And I hope that we know that we don't have to do it alone, that we can have community, we can have friends, we can have therapists if we need it, but that we can process it with ourselves, maybe talk about it with ourselves, talk about it with others, and ultimately talk about it with God. Together, let's experience the kind of freedom and personal connection that can be catalysted from sadness. Thanks for listening and sharing this space with me today. I'm going to pray, and then we're going to move into a time of communion. So feel free to grab a cracker and some wine, or a cookie and some milk, whatever communion looks like at your house today. And we're going to pray. God, thank you for sadness. I never thought I would say that, God, but I am so grateful that you have given us such diverse emotions where we can learn from, where we can see you in them. I pray that we can feel freely this week, and that we can see you and see your hope, but also know that you are holding us in the midst of our sadness. We give you this time. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for your grace and your goodness. In Jesus' name, amen.
Succeed when you get what you want but not what you need, when you feel so tired but you can't sleep, stuck in reverse, and the tears come streaming down your face. Something you can't replace, when you love someone but it goes to waste. Could it be worse? Lights will fix you. High up above and down below, when you're too in love to let it go. But if you never try, you'll never know just what you're worth. Lights will guide you home and ignite your bones. I will try to fix you. Tears stream down your face when you lose something you cannot replace. Tears stream down your face, and tears stream down your face. I promise you I will learn from my mistakes. Tears stream down your face, and lights will guide you home and ignite your bones. I will try to fix you. I have lost my appetite, and a flood is welling up behind my eyes. So I eat the tears I cry. And if that's not enough, they know just the words to cut and tear and pry. When they ask me where's your guard, why you downcast on my soul? Why so disturbed within me? I can remember when you showed your grace to me as a deep house for water, so my soul thirsts for you. And when I behold your glory, you so faithfully renew, like a bed of rest for my fainting flesh. Oh, I am satisfied in you. So when I'm staring at the ground, it's an inbred feedback loop that drags me down. So it's time to lift my brow and remember better days when I loved to worship you in all your ways with the sweetest songs of praise. Why you downcast on my soul? Why so disturbed within me? I can remember when you showed your grace to me as a deep house for water, so my soul thirsts for you. And when I survey your splendor, you so faithfully renew, like a bed of rest for my faith. your son went out to suffer in my place, just to show me that I'm safe. So why am I down? And why so disturbed? I'm satisfied in you. I'm satisfied